Hey guys, it's Damien here, and the last time we actually went over the bottom battery plate for my motorcycle was a few years back, and in that video we went over brazing square tubing on it and installed a right angle bar on the bottom side of the plate. Now, for my next steps that I had to take to make sure that the batteries were properly installed and mounted on this battery plate, I ended up using the bottom side of my 3D printed battery cover to trace out the location of where both of my battery modules will sit in the area of where the engine used to sit. And then after that, I took out the battery plate and then used C-clamps to hold the 3D printed covers onto the plate. From there, I pretty much used a nail with a hammer as a center punch to mark all the hole locations. There was about 12 hole locations per module. I ended up taking a number 40 Irwin drill, which is meant for an M3 through hole before tapping that hole. And I ended up drilling out small pilot holes into each hole, but I didn't do that all the way through because it wouldn't be convenient to draw all those holes while the 3D printed covers were still on that plate. So once I took out the 3D printed covers, I started to drill through the holes through, and the drill bit actually ended up getting quite dull after 12 holes. So I ended up buying another one to be able to finish all 24 holes. And I realized at this point that the best thing that I could have done is bought cutting oil to easily tap the hole, or I'm sorry, to drill out the holes into that aluminum plate. But I didn't end up doing that. So for future, I would use cutting oil. So then I started using an M3 tap, and on the 12th hole, the tap broke, and that's kind of when I decided to leave it. I tried to figure out the best way to remove it, but then I thought to myself I would have to increase the hole dimension and then create a different tapped hole and I just pretty much wanted to use the same screws across the board. So what I ended up doing is I ended up buying more taps and tapped each hole cautiously. So once I felt some friction, I untapped it and then tapped it back in. So I pretty much went back in and out with that tap until I went all the way through so that there wasn't much stress on that tap itself. Once that was all done, it looked quite nice. So next I actually ended up 3D printing a tool that would hold the nut while installing my mounting bolts into the square tubing. The bolt was about 1 inch long, so it was a little too long to be able to use a wrench to bolt it down and then take the wrench out, or use a socket inside the square tubings because it just would not fit. So to be able to easily tighten down the bolt, I ended up using this 3D printed T-shaped hexagonal hole design with a cutout on the bottom for the screw to kind of come out of. So for the hardware, for the mounting hardware, I didn't end up using lock washers because the nut that I ended up using had a nylon insert inside of it, which would help with any sort of vibration to come loose. Now, on the bottom side, after I installed those rivet nuts in my previous video, I ended up installing my M5 screws with a washer and a lock washer on both sides. So after installing those M5 screws, I thought I was done, but I realized that the threaded bottom battery plate was not a good decision because I had threaded battery covers, and when you're trying to have two holes threaded, you're fighting against the thread to be able to compress one surface to the next surface. So the smarter move was to actually take out this battery plate again because I needed to compress the batteries up against the plate. So the best thing to do was to create the holes on the battery plate as through holes. So at that point, I ended up deciding to increase the hole size to an M4 through hole because M3s were, I started to think that M3s were slightly too small. So I ended up using a 7/32 of an inch drill bit to drill out all the holes on the bottom battery plate so that way the M4 screws can easily go through the battery plate and then eventually will be threaded into the bottom covers of the battery. So that's what I ended up deciding on doing. It was quite a hassle, even after I decided to change my mind to use M4 through holes. The M3 tap, the drill, the tapping, the oh man, it could have been a lot easier, but you know what? That's what happens when you're trying to work on projects and you're trying to come up with different ideas right on the spot. But if you guys like this type of content, please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.